Want to try growing clouds? I know what I certainly do. Oh, don't worry. I'm not going to be as dishonest as news channel weather reporters. I'm speaking to everybody here today in order to outline whether or not cloud seeding is a viable and efficient technique of weather control. In this speech, I'll give an introduction to what cloud seeding is and some of its history, reference sources and have reported on cloud seeding experiments, and then ask whether or not cloud seeding should be banned, used, or if it is in a more nuanced position. Now, many people may have heard of the term cloud seeding, which is the hypothesis that suggests that it may be possible to encourage rain by A. Inserting supercooled ice into rain clouds and thereby causing ice crystals to form and melt in the raindrops, or B. by lacing high moisture atmosphere with silver iodide and thereby causing rain by the same general principle as the last example. That is usually how it works. Now, it is a relatively new formula, even though the concept of making your own rain cloud has been around for some time. In an article published in January 2018, writer Angus Chin from a newsletter explores how cloud seeding, sowing clouds with small particles to make them rain or snow, has a reputation as dodgy as the weather. In a nutshell, this means that cloud seeding is exciting, but today and yesterday, and even decades ago, it has had a turbulent history full of potential and graft. For example, cloud seeding has been the main inspiration for rainmakers, con artists that promised rain to impoverished citizens during the Great Depression. Rainmakers mainly tried to make rain by shooting rockets up to the sky in order to stimulate air particles. The practice was particularly prominent in the Dust Bowl. This shows the history of cloud seeding has had some questionable detail. Now, mostly it is the image of the rainmakers that provides the general conception of cloud seeding, and it's what many first think of when we hear a reference about cloud seeding. Now, despite its sketchy background, something special a few years later happened very exciting again. The process of cloud seeding was refined in the 1940s when a scientist named Bernard Vonnegut discovered that silver iodide works as a medium for cloud seeding. His discovery influenced many people to continue experimenting with cloud seeding, even though it had a questionable reputation thanks to the rainmakers. Now, there have been a number of good experiments on cloud seeding with various results. As an example, an article drafted in 2014 and published in 2015, writers Ritzman et al. From institutes such as the University of Wyoming, Laramie, Wyoming, and National Center for Atmospheric Research, Boulder, Colorado, informs readers that to more accurately assess the benefits of glycogenic seeding, the percent change due to glycogenic seeding should only be applied to seedable precipitation events. Their work showed that cloud seeding was a viable thing to study and encouraged others to initiate experiments in areas that have more conductive conditions for getting positive results. Unfortunately, these conductive conditions are regrettably rare, causing a restriction of the potential benefits and happenings of cloud seeding to only certain times and places. In a 2013 manuscript published by the Journal of Applied Meteorology and Climatology, researcher Breed and colleagues from recognizable places such as Weather Modification Incorporation, Fargo, North Dakota, noted how early on it was recognized that winter orographic clouds might be especially amenable to seeding conditions because of their frequency and persistence of supercooled clouds. This gives more support to the theory that cloud seeding works best in certain conditions. Again, not encouraging. In a 2020 July article published by the American Meteorology Society, authors Tessendorf and colleagues from previously mentioned places discussed the potential for cloud seeding in Wyoming, saying that after the conclusion of the WWMPP, the WWDC decided to provide funding for additional feasibility and program design studies on the potential for operational cloud seeding programs in Wyoming mountain ranges, specifically the Bighorn Mountains. So, despite the limitations with conditions, the Tessendorf article demonstrates that even in 2020, there are still ongoing experiments regarding the feasibility of cloud seeding. For all this evidence of questionable data, it should be wondered if cloud seeding is actually useful to humanity. Now, I'm going to give 3 main points here. My first one is that cloud seeding should not be used. It has, as previously stated, had an ambiguous history, fraught with cons and inadequate data, and all experiments that have shown some achievement and actually caused some rain have had evidence that only works in specific conditioned areas, and when it has worked, there's only been a marginally noticeable effect. For that, news to say, it won't have adverse effects on the environment. After all, silver iodide is debatably toxic. Now, for my second point, so cloud seeding should be used. It has a potential to help solve many problems, such as bleeding clouds dry early by making them rain before they can reach a certain point of location where they could cause trouble, such as floods and havoc. It could also be used to encourage water to pour down areas that lack a proper amount of H2O, such as settlements and deserts in the Rio Grande. And not to mention that being able to make clouds pour down can fill up depleted reservoirs. Now, for my third point, I argue that we need a more nuanced position on it, and that we should look at it for different benefits. And while it may not be possible to actually control the weather or encourage clouds where to rain, research into phenomena has contributed to the knowledge of the mechanics of rain better. This additional insight pertains to the nature of weather and how to predict it. However, I wouldn't completely trust in cloud seeding and only maintain a general interest in the possibility that we may be able to control storms. Now, I've presented to all of you the choppy and shaky topic of cloud seeding. I've shown the basic dynamics of this hypothesis, presented general research about it, and questioned about its utility and helpfulness to humankind. Now, unfortunately, while we are still nowhere near having our own grow your own cloud kit, there's still a possibility that someone may one day discover the secret. So we must keep our media senses sharp and beware when people start purchasing land for condensation farming and start storing rain seeds for winter.